Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So behind me I have a Pontiac G6. We're going to be doing a control arm on the passenger side. This is the lower control arm. So let's begin. Alright guys, so before we begin the removal of this control arm, I just kind of want to point out the fastening points on it. So you'll have three bolts holding the control arm on. You have one back here, that's by the bushing. That's the first point where it gets bolted up. Second point is right here in the front, and then we also have the ball joint, which is right here. The rear bolts are not horrible. This bushing can come off fairly easy. There's two bolts on it. This front one, however, I will say is an engineering disaster. Um, I will make a little rant video on this one, but you guys can see this forward bolt is very difficult because the motor mount is there. We're going to have to lift the motor and remove that motor mount out of the way to be able to gain access to that. It's not the worst thing, but just something that why would they do it that way? That's how I feel about it in my book. And then our ball joint is just separated here by a regular bolt, kind of a pass-through bolt. These can be difficult. If they season there, you definitely want to put some PB Blaster, kind of let them sit for a little bit, definitely help mellow them out. So that's where I'm going to choose to begin. I'm going to start spraying everything down. Now, before you even get to this stage, you will have an engine cover here. Now, I already went ahead and I removed mine off camera. They can be a little bit difficult, but they fasten all the way from here to here. They kind of intertwine inside of the front bumper area over here, guys. So just be mindful of that. I would say probably don't remove it all out of the way, maybe about halfway, and if you can kind of peel it back just to give yourself room, that would probably be the better way to do it. So let me go ahead and spray everything down, and then I'll bring you guys back and show you guys the next step. Okay guys, so the first thing that I like to do on these after you remove that cover and you spray everything down with some penetrating oil is I like to tackle this motor mount. Now you can do this one of two ways, whatever ways you find easy. Normally you can just unbolten the two bolts that are underneath the motor mount, lift up the motor. Sometimes you'll be able to gain enough access in there to be able to slide the bolt out. However, I do want to be able to get my tool in there and get it out. I want to do this as fast as I can. So I'm going to be using an impact gun to slide in there to remove that bolt. Sometimes they can be kind of horrible to get out, and I'm referring to this bolt right here that holds the front of the control arm. So what you're going to want to do is remove these top bolts. There's one here, one here. It's kind of hard to see because this car's had leaking over the years. You can see it's kind of caked up on there. One bolt here, one bolt there. At least a good thing about it being wet up there is that those bolts I know will come off because they won't really rust up when there's enough of oil on there. And then if I kind of lower you guys a little bit, you'll see you have a nut here and a nut here. That holds the bottom portion to the frame. So what you're looking to do is basically separate the mount from both sides. And then we're going to be placing something underneath the oil pan on a block of wood to kind of help lift up the actual motor. So that way we can remove our motor mount and be able to get access in there. So that's where I like to start. I basically start loosening all the stuff, getting it ready, and I don't lift up my motor until I have everything else disconnected, and I leave this bolt for last, guys. So let me go ahead and begin. I'm gonna start loosening that side up of the motor mount and then the bottom, and I'll bring you guys back in when I'm removing everything else. Okay guys, I went ahead and got my motor mount bolts removed. So where I start for the second stage of this is I'm gonna go ahead and remove this bolt. It's a bolt with a nut on the other side. Usually I tell people to impact the other side or remove the nut. You don't want to try to spin the nut off the bolt here because sometimes this bolt could be seized. So I'm going to do is hold this side. I'm going to go ahead and spin the nut off on the other side, and I'll bring you back once I'm done with that. I went ahead and I got my bolt that holds on my ball joint to my knuckle. Now one thing that I did was I took a hammer, I just kind of tapped this to see if this ball joint will move in and out of the knuckle. I wanted to make sure it wasn't seized, and it's not. This one actually does kind of slide back and forth. Now I don't want to fight it and try to knock it out of there now. What I'm going to do is go ahead and remove the back bushing bolts and then the forward bolt, and then I'm going to swing it down. It comes off a lot easier because if you guys notice the angle that it's in, that ball joint is going to have a tendency to want to stay up there. Even if you hit it down, it wants to spring up. I just choose to do it this way. They do make tools where you can just kind of pry them down and pop them out, but it's not really beneficial for me at this stage to take it out. I could always wait to the end like I'm choosing to do so. Alright guys, so now we are in the rear of the control arm, and you will see this is where the bushing is, where it holds the rear. Now what you're going to want to do is go ahead and remove these two bolts. Now these are two bolts feeding up, and there's two nuts that hold everything together on the top. So you got to hold the nut on the top as you spin the bottom. Just kind of give you guys a heads up on that. And it's real easy to get in here. You may want to use like some sort of wrench or something skinny because the bar is kind of in the way. See the stabilizer bar is right there. But you know, you should be able to get it off fairly easy. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and I'll be right back with you guys. Alright guys, I went ahead and I got my nut and bolts removed for the lower rear part of the arm. Now what we're going to be doing is we need to tackle the front part, which is right here. Now in order to do that, we need to basically raise our engine. We already loosened our motor mount. We got all the bolts off. And the way I'm going to choose to do this, and let me see if I can kind of zoom you guys out of this here so you guys can kind of see. But I have these jack stands that are basically lift stands. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and place this underneath the oil pan with a block of wood. As you guys can see here, I got my block of wood. I'm going to go ahead and lift this up, and I'm going to slowly lift up the motor using that jack. And then when I get enough clearance up here and the engine starts lifting, I'm going to pop this motor mount out of there, and that'll give me some free and clear access to be able to get in there. Now let me go ahead and get the jack set up, and I'll be back with you guys. I know doing this at home, you're not going to have a lift, so what you're going to have to do in this case is use a jack stand or something to kind of help prop the engine out, or kind of, just have another smaller jack. Make sure before you put anything on the oil pan, you got to have a block of wood. You got to have something soft when you're doing this, guys. You can't have just a metal jack on the oil pan. You will crack it. I always keep some 2x4s and wood like this laying around the shop just for instances like this. Okay guys, just to show you, we got our wood on our oil pan. There's no metal touching the oil pan. We got our jack basically holding up the motor, and I also put another jack in the back just in case the car decides to sway. Now if you're doing this on the ground with a little jack, you don't really have to worry about that. I'm in a lift, so sometimes when you push up on the front, it'll have a tendency to kind of want to go that way, so I just did it as a safety precaution. Now once you jack it up for a majority of the way, what you can do is come in here, kind of angle this out this way, and you'll be able to get your motor mount out just like that. And it's really simple, guys. The way that these work is, like I showed you, there's two on the bottom, two on the top, and that's how it holds the motor in. Now that I was able to get this off, what I'm going to do is go ahead and get inside of this area. You guys can see we have a cutout, and the bolt is right there. You guys can see it easily goes through. I'm going to go in there with a swivel and an impact socket and just get that bolt out. Now that everything is unbolted, you're going to want to take your pry bar and basically just kind of get in here and pry your control arm out. And then when you get it out, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and pop the joint on the ball joint, and you'll be able to get off your control arm. Now one thing to be mindful on this, guys, and you'll kind of see something here. This stabilizer bar is in the way. Now this thing has a broken link. You guys can see it up here. The link is definitely broken. I mentioned it to the customer. He said that he doesn't want to fix it. He just wanted the control arm. He's trying to save money, but either way, whatever, it is what it is. I would probably replace it because it's not going to take that much to replace it at this point. But either way, you guys can see the stabilizer bar is in the way of the control arm, so you got to be careful with this. Normally what I would do is disconnect the stabilizer bar. Now it's already broken on this side, so I'm going to disconnect the driver's side to be able to push the bar up to gain access to be able to pop it off all the way. If you want, you can try fighting it and trying to angle it, do whatever you want to do with it. However, I've learned my lesson on that. It's just easier to remove it than fight it. Now that we went ahead and we removed our control arm out of the way here, what you're going to want to do is take your new arm right here and you're going to want to reinstall it. Now I'm not going to show you guys on camera how to reinstall it because this may take a little bit, it will kind of fight me. But I always start by connecting it up here first. I try to get these two, the front and the rear of it, fastened, and then I go in to hook the ball joint. When I remove it, it's the opposite. I go for these two first and then the ball joint, just because it has something to hold it in so it doesn't pop out and hit me. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall this, guys, and I'll bring you back once we're ready for bolting it back up. Alright guys, so I went ahead and I installed my control arm, and the way I did it was I fed the rear bushing in first, and then I slid this in, and then I was able to get my ball joint in. I did have to kind of hit it on here. That's why you guys kind of see these little points. This ball joint is very stiff. It's brand new, so I kind of used my little hammer to knock it. It wasn't really hard, but unfortunately the aluminum gets a little scarred up. I usually use a brass hammer, but my brass hammer broke, but had to do what I had to do. But everything is all set to go. Everything got tightened up and it's all set now. It will kind of fight you when you're trying to put this rear and the front in and trying to get this like adjustment. So just be careful with that, guys. Okay, guys, the next step in this is we're gonna put our motor mount in. Now, the way you want to put this in is you're gonna kind of have to angle it in like this. So kind of remember how you took it out. Now, this is the same exact position I took mine out in. The only reason why I know is this stud was shorter in the front. Looks like someone has broken this in the past. That way I know it goes in that way. Now, I don't think it makes a difference if you flip them around, but I like marking them. Usually I'll put a mark here, so I put it back the way I took it off. Again, I don't think it makes a big difference, but you know, it's a possibility. So after your motor mount is in, what you're gonna do is you're gonna lower the engine, and I'll kind of show you here a little bit. As you lower your engine, what you wanna do is kind of wiggle your mount to make sure that's gonna go in. Now you guys can kind of see my motor has kind of shifted. It does not want to kind of line up where it should be. So what you want to do is just grab a pry bar, and you know, I'm gonna have to pry forwards on mine to be able to get it to angle correctly. I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera, but you know, you kind of got to play with it. You're not gonna be able to just drop this and have it fall into place. You kind of have to do some maneuvering with it. So let me do that off camera and I'll be right back with you guys. Alright guys, I went ahead and I got my motor mount tightened up and everything is good to go. And the last stage in this is you're going to want to just put your cover. Now this thing is a pretty big cover. This thing will fight you. It's basically, I'll kind of zoom you guys out here. Now if you took it off you'll kind of know, but since I didn't show the removal of it, it may look a little foreign to you guys. But you can see this thing is pretty long and it just kind of goes up underneath here, and you got to fight this shielding here. So that's why all this paneling here is taken off. Just make sure you put this back. I know this can be very daunting and you may want to not put it back, but it does help protect your belt and, you know, water and corrosion and things getting up there. So definitely put this back. Once this is in place, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and put on your tire, and then you're basically done doing your lower control arm. So hopefully this video helps you guys out if you're doing this or something similar to this. So with that said, please comment, like, and subscribe. It'll definitely help my channel grow. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys on the next repair.